We have Marcia calling in from North Carolina. There we go. Marcia, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Well, thank you. I'm on speakerphone. Is that a problem?
We prefer if you're not on speakerphone. Is there a way you couldn't be on speakerphone for us?
Yeah, it's just harder for me to hear, but I can do it though if
okay. Well, I'll tell you this: unless the crew tells me otherwise, you sound okay right now, actually. So as long as we're doing wherever you're at, if you could just stay where you are, that's probably okay.
Okay. So I was just thinking in reference to when theists call about morality, we often get into a debate on how our morality is decided. And I think that what might be helpful, at least to me, what I say is that I feel like theist morality could be kind of classified as a noun, like this block of lists, 10 commandments or what have you, whereas non-theists, we are trying to create our list, and we look at morality more as a verb, as an action, the act of figuring out what we should do, what's right, what's good. And I think that might help move the conversation, so then we can decide, well, which one do we think is better, as opposed to constantly arguing on where it comes from.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. I think from my experience as a Christian, morality is definitely an objective construct, right? As a Christian, you believe that morality definitely exists, whether or not it's separate from God or is part of God. There's whole debates about that, but the point is it's out there and there are rules, and you either following them or you're not following them. It's kind of a binary. For a lot of us as non-theists, we can take different routes. You can still defend an objective moral system, of course, not based on religious thought, but there are non-theist folks that do. Myself, I'm more in I've been reading J.L. Mackie recently, for example. I'm kind of more of a moral nihilist, which means I am more interested in the idea that morality is based on subjective interpretations of what's right and wrong. Doesn't mean that I don't think it's important. Doesn't mean that I don't think it's valuable or practical. Not at all. If anything, it makes me more open and empathetic to people around me. But to recognize that it is a human construct does mean powerful things. It means that we ultimately have the control over what we think is right and wrong and what we can decide to do to other people. It doesn't have to be commands from on high. It can just be from us. And that can be a scary and powerful thing. But of course, Christianity is way against that, typically, right? Most theists are really in this camp, or this idea that if we just happen to know all the rules, if we just had the mind of God, we'd be able to perfectly understand what is right and what is wrong. But of course, I just don't think that's true. Anyway, what do you think, Darante?
I know a big wrestle for me, a big struggle for me was that I actually could never separate God's morality from human morality. It was an absolute mirror. God's morality looked so much like the morality of humanity that once I actually separated from this belief system, I can't even imagine commands ever coming from on high. It's always seemed to come from us. So I am more prone to see morality as something that is subjective, but I don't have a struggle with that because our entire experience is subjective for the most part. It's almost really hard to define what exactly is objective in this universe outside of the subjective language we've used to describe the objective. So it's an interesting thought experiment there. But no, it's obviously a conversation we get a lot, where do you get your morality from? And as a parent, I've raised 4 children and I watched them develop each of their own morality. And in the most simplest terms, they got it from realizing what they didn't like in life. And so if I do this to my sibling's not going to want to play with me. So I'm not going to do that anymore. And to me, that's one of the most beautiful ways you can see how human beings develop our ideas of subjective morality.
Yeah. Marcia, what do you think?
Well, that always frightens them because they feel that humans can be just as bad as they can be good. And
Yes.
even though their God does the same thing, in their minds, it's really a weird thing because as people are becoming more skeptical, your brain starts to work differently, and it's a weird thing when you're having a conversation with them. They don't see certain things. Certain things don't click.
Yeah.
And I think maybe saying that would move them away from, oh, I'm going to find this thing and challenge the thing that you're getting yours from, and say there's always a problem with the way you get your morals, because it could be anybody could do anything. Whereas if you move it and say, well, I don't think morality is a thing that I get. I think it's a thing that I do, that we do together. And so it's different than what you guys are doing. And lastly, I'll let you go. I wanted to say to Bradley, he said that we are atheists are attacking theists, or really it's theists that are attacking non-theists, because they are saying you guys are bad because you're not doing these things that we say you're supposed to do. So they're attacking us, and we're trying to say, hey, you know, I mean, I don't want to worship. I don't want to worship. That's not a good thing. Bowing down, being on your knees, and you know. So
I hear, Marcia. I hear. If atheists were the majority in the world, we would be punching down if we were doing this show. I don't think we're punching down. I really think of this as a self-defense. It is kind of that way, right? Yeah.
Supremacy sickness. That's what
it is. Yeah, I appreciate that perspective.
Guys.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you for your call.
Thank you.
Yeah.